Hello and welcome to the session. This is the part 3 of clustering, where we discuss about hierarchical clustering algorithms, procedure for agglomerative algorithms, and we'll see the different types of linkages in hierarchical clustering. So let's first understand what's a hierarchical clustering. So far, if you refer the previous two videos which are given in the description box, we have discussed what is clustering. We discussed about the different types of proximity measure. Now we will see a particular clustering algorithm which we call it as hierarchical clustering algorithm, where the concept is we are partitioning the objects into hierarchical relationships. So basically there will be some kind of a hierarchical relationships among the objects, and the hierarchical relationship among the objects will be represented in a figure called as dendrogram. So dendrogram is something like this. This is the dendrogram, where we are trying to represent the hierarchical relationship between the objects in the form of a dendrogram. Now hierarchical clustering includes three different concepts: categories, agglomerative methods, and divisive methods. Now agglomerative methods means where as the word itself says, agglomerative means joining together. The meaning of agglomerative is we join them together or merge them together. So what we do here is we have clusters. We merge the clusters to form a single cluster. So that is agglomerative method. Okay, so agglomerative word means merging. So we have clusters, we merge them together to form a single cluster. That is agglomerative. Divisive method means it's the reverse. As the word itself says, we divide, division. So we have a single cluster initially, which I'm going to go on dividing and form smaller clusters. So it's divisive method. Okay, now let's look into the procedure of agglomerative method. As I said, agglomerative means we merge the clusters. Initially I will have, let's say, 3 clusters. I will merge them together, right? I will merge cluster 1 and cluster 2 and form a bigger cluster. Then that cluster I will merge with cluster 3. So basically it's a bottom-up approach, right? So it's something like this. Initially I have clusters like this: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Then in a bottom-up approach, I go on merging them together. See, I have merged B and C and form a cluster called as BC. I have merged D and E and form a cluster called DE. I have merged F and G and form a cluster FG. Next, I'm going to merge H and FG. Next, I'm merging here A with this. I have merged these two, I form BCDE, then I merged. Then finally, I'm merging FGH with ABCDE to form a big cluster. So it's a bottom-up approach, right, where we are successfully merging the clusters together. So let's see the algorithm, right? The algorithm is, let's say I have n samples, right, which are nothing but separate clusters. So let's say these are the n samples, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Initially I have n clusters. The second step is I will do this in a loop, right? I will determine 2 most similar clusters. So let's say I have determined B and C as the most similar clusters. I merge them together, right? And therefore after merging I have reduced the number of clusters as n minus 1. Before I had n clusters here in the last level here. Now after merging I have n minus 1. Now I will repeat this process in a loop, right, until I finally reach this stage, right, where I have just one single cluster, right? So this step 2 will be repeated until I form a one big cluster. So that is agglomerative algorithm. Now hierarchical clustering. Now agglomerative is a type of clustering which we use in hierarchical. See, hierarchical clustering, as I said, basically there are 2 ways that you can do. Either you can do agglomerative method, which is a bottom-up method, or you can do divisive method, which is a top-bottom approach. But there are different types of hierarchical clustering. As I said, in hierarchical clustering, basically we are grouping together similar things and organizing the data in form of a tree-like structure, right? In the previous diagram we saw it was more like a tree-like structure. Now the key part of this is we calculate how do you do the clustering, right? So clustering, normally we do it using the distance matrix, which we have discussed in the previous session. We find the distance between the clusters and we merge or we divide, depending upon whether I am using agglomerative or divisive method. Now there are different types of linkages in hierarchical clustering. How we do the linking, right? How we link the clusters. Now how did I say that I'm going to link B and C? How did I say that I'm going to link D and E, right? So the different types of linkages, right? Now that there are different types of linkages, now that is based upon the distance. Like there's a single linkage, complete linkage, and average linkage. So let's see the difference between all the three. Single linkage means, let's say I have two clusters here, R and S. Right? So remember, in single linkage we find the minimum distance between the 2 points. So in this cluster, these are some of the points I have, or data objects I have, and these are some of the data objects of cluster S. Right? Now I find the minimum distance between these two data objects. Right? And then I connect these two. So basically in single linkage I am finding the minimum distance between the 2 points, and I am connecting these two clusters. So now I am connecting cluster R with RS because the minimum distance is sufficed. This is the minimum distance I found, and therefore I am merging R and S. So the formula which we are using is obvious. I find the minimum distance. So minimum distance between I and J, whichever is minimum, I am going to group them together. Now these two data points are minimum, so I am going to group these two. Right? Now these are all far from each other. Right? When you see the objects from here and objects, the rest of the points, they're all having little higher distance. The most minimum is these two. So I'm going to group these two together and form one cluster. So that is single linkage concept. Complete linkage is reverse. I find the maximum distance and I link them together. Right? So I link the objects which is having maximum distance from each other. So therefore formula is, I find max of D of I comma J. Okay, now since we have the distance, now what's the advantage here is, in single linkage it is sensitive to outliers and it can connect clusters based on very small number of close points. So only small points which are very close to each other will be connected. Whereas in complete linkage it is also sensitive, it is more sensitive to outliers, and it is trying to make sure that clusters even which are not too far also are grouped together. The third one is average linkage. It is between these two. I find the average. Right? I find the average distance between all the points. See, from all the points I try to find the average. Right? So based upon the average distance I do the clustering. So basically we are trying to maintain a balance here between single linkage and complete linkage, because I am not to overcome the drawbacks of both the methods. Right? To overcome the drawbacks of minimum linkage and maximum linkage, what I'm taking is, I'm trying to take the average, and whichever points is having an average distance, right, in between, so those clusters those data points I'm clustering. So the formula is, what we do is the average formula, right? Summation of D of I comma J, where I ranges from 1 to NR, J ranges from 1 to NS, divided by NR into NS. So it's the average formula that I use, where NR is the number of data points in R and NS is the number of data points in S. So these are the different types of linkages. So that's it about today's session. So in the next session we will discuss about single linkage algorithm. So we will be only discussing about single linkage. In the next session we'll see the algorithm and we'll do a problem on that. Thank you so much.